Kennedy's Corner. Master Podcast Pontificator.
Kennedy's Corner, back on the dial, traveling at a speed at 45 RPMs, where the newfound vinyl will bring you to a new, preferred listening destination. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Kennedy's Corner, which is a serious rock talk production. I'm your host, Ferris Kennedy, and today we're going to talk about a little bit of AC/DC, a band that's been going strong for 50 years and counting. Today we talk about the biggest yes or no question. It has caused debate throughout the years. It's not a simple question like, do you prefer Winston or Camel cigarettes? Or who wore the assless chaps better, David Lee Roth or Axl Rose? Considering it was a post on Roth's Instagram many years ago, we will give him the thumbs up on this one. The topic today is one that makes AC/DC fans either offended, defensive, or having them say, oh, shut up. That's right. The Bon versus Brian debate. Who was better? And I have spoken to a few AC/DC fans throughout the years, in Facebook groups and online forums, and let me tell you, they present arguments on both fronts. Is there really a wrong or right answer? Well, after this segment, we will have the answer that hopefully we could all agree on. As a kid growing up, given my age for the longest time, I only knew of Brian Johnson as the lead singer of AC/DC. It was the later years in my teens when I was able to explore the record shops on my own that I found out that Brian Johnson was not the original singer. There was Bon Scott before him. Mind-blowing to me as I never knew that. And then much later in life I discovered that Bon Scott had replaced Dave Evans, who was the original singer for AC/DC. That was a massive WTF. Here is some more fuel to that massive fire that was going on in my mind. Dave Evans refused to go on stage and perform. Can we have a WTF just one more time? This is one of those moments where you give your head a shake. Now, for those of you who know me on a personal level or through our podcast, you all know how I feel about singers being replaced. I've always sided with the one who started it all. And this one is totally different. It's not the David Lee Roth versus Sammy Hagar. I'm on Roth's side. It's not Steve Perry versus Arnel Pineda. I'm definitely on Steve Perry's side. And it's not Vince Neil versus John Corabi. I like John Corabi, but I'm going to be on Vince Neil. And, well, if you want to take another step further, it's John Fogerty versus CCR. Let's be realistic here. John Fogerty is CCR. But this is all about preserving the brand and identity that carries on. For those of you that know, AC/DC was formed in 1973 in Australia by guitarist Malcolm Young after his previous band, the Velvet Underground, collapsed. Now, this had no relation to Lou Reed's American group. And then with his younger brother Angus serving as the lead guitarist, who was only 18 at the time. His sister suggested that he wear his school uniform on stage. The look became the band's visual trademark. The original lineup featuring Dave Evans as a singer, ex-Easy Beats Harry Vanda, and George Young, Malcolm and Angus's older brother, who was producing. The band moved to Melbourne the following year, where the drummer Phil Rudd, formerly of the Colored Balls, and bassist Mark Evans joined the lineup. The band's chauffeur, Bon Scott, became the lead vocalist when singer Dave Evans refused to go on stage. Previously, Scott had been a vocalist for the Australian prog rock bands like Fraternity and the Valentines. More importantly, he helped cement the group's image as brutes. He had several convictions for minor criminal offenses and was rejected by the Australian Army for being socially maladjusted. AC/DC were socially maladjusted. Throughout their career, they favored crude double entendres and violent imagery, all spiked with mischievous sense of fun. So here's a few facts about AC/DC. The first headline show was at Melbourne's Festival Hall on the 4th of November 1975. Cheap Trick is the only band that AC/DC ever invited to do an encore with them. That was in December 18th of 1977. Back in the very early days when Dave Evans fronted the band, they performed sets of Chuck Berry and Rolling Stones songs at a close friend's wedding. One guest asked him to play Zorba the Greek, but the band did not know it. Malcolm said, "Give me a minute." He went away and practiced for a while, all from ear. Then Malcolm came back and said, "Okay, tell him we could do it." When Iran was struck with a computer hacker back in 2009 and 2010, the attacking virus was caused Stuxnet, which caused thousands of computers in Iran's nuclear facilities to break down, all blasting out the song Thunderstruck at full volume. When Bon Scott posted out his Christmas cards in 1979, something he did every year, he didn't pay enough postage, meaning many of the cards were delayed and arrived late after he had died on February 19, 1980. The original singer in the Aussie band The Velvet Underground, with whom Malcolm Young played before he formed AC/DC, was called Brian Johnson. The very first time Bon Scott sang live with AC/DC was October 5th, 1975, Brian Johnson's birthday. The original album covers for Highway to Hell is purported to have been the devil driving a car, peering in his rear view mirror, with the band all seated in the back seat. A photo shoot was even conducted in Staten Island, New York, which featured the band hitchhiking. In the end, the record company balked at the idea and instead using a shot from Power Rangers Shoot, superimposing horns and a satanic tail on Angus, one of the new shots was used to the back cover. Angus Young is well known for playing his now trademark Gibson SG guitar. The reason is that the SG guitar neck is the only one he can comfortably put his hands around. And AC/DC was inducted in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 2003. So those are some little facts about AC/DC. So now we're going to look at the singers of AC/DC. No, we're not going to talk about Mr. Dave Evans. We're going to start right off with Bon Scott. He is best remembered as the original frontman of the legendary hard rock band AC/DC. Singer Bon Scott was born Ronald Belford Scott in Kirriemuir, Scotland on July 9th, 1946. As a child, he began performing in his father's bagpipe band, which you can hear Bon playing the bagpipes on the song It's a Long Way to the Top if you want to rock and roll. Bon relocated with his family to Australia in 1952, later playing in a local rock outfit called Spectres at the age of 15. 1967, Scott had joined the Melbourne-based group The Valentines, making his record debut with the single Every Day I Have to Cry. The band soon emerged as one of the most popular on the Aussie circuit, in the mid-1969 issuing an EP, My Old Man's Groovy Old Man. A drug bust destroyed the Valentines' public image. However, after cracking the national top 30 with their 1970 single Juliet, the band dissolved. Scott soon joined the Sydney blues rock unit Fraternity, issuing the LP Livestock in 1971. Flaming Gala followed a year later. Bon Scott was a big fan of show tunes, a passion he picked up as a boy. In 1973, Scott was involved in a motorcycle accident, which left him comatose for several months, during which time Fraternity disbanded. After recovering, he worked a series of odd jobs before recording a demo as a member of the short-lived Mount Lofty Rangers. 1974, Scott joined AC/DC, recording the group's debut LP High Voltage a year later. AC/DC's ascent to international stardom culminated in 1979 when their LP Highway to Hell reached the US top 20. For some personal appearance, Bon would stick his fringe down with scotch tape after he showered to prevent it from curling up too much. Bon's early morning ritual was to gargle with red wine and honey to help retain the raspy edge to his voice. Bon favored a prominent crease in his jeans and could often be found ironing his stage clothes on the bar before a gig. The hit single Highway to Hell was written by Bon in relation to Canning Highway in Perth, Australia. The stretch of highway was immortalized in 1979's Highway to Hell, nicknamed for the fatal crashes that plagued its most dangerous intersection. February 19, 1980, Scott died in the wake of an all-night drinking binge. In March 2020, the city of Perth, Australia honored the death of Bon Scott by closing off 10 kilometers of Canning Highway for 8 hours for AC/DC Covers concert. 1980, the surviving members of the band, tapping new vocalist Brian Johnson to the record, the classic Back in Black album, to pay homage to their fallen frontman, Bon Scott. Bon was with AC/DC from 1973 to 1980. During his tenure with the band, he performed 880 shows and recorded 8 studio albums. Those albums were High Voltage, released in 1975, TNT, released in 75, another High Voltage version in 1976, because back then they had both US and Australian versions. 1976, Dirty Deed Done Dirt Cheap. 1977, Let There Be Rock. 1978, Power Witch. 1978, If You Want Blood, You've Got It. And 1979, Highway to Hell. Now, the singer that has succeeded for Bon Scott is Brian Johnson. Brian Johnson, well, it's never easy to replace a founding member of a band who dies tragically, but AC/DC's Brian Johnson fit in with the Australian hard rocking band perfectly, and it was accepted immediately by the group's legion of fans. Born October 5th, 1947 in Newcastle upon Tyne, England. Johnson sang with a church choir as a youngster, but like millions of other teenagers of the 60s, was taken off by rock and roll. In early 1972, Johnson formed his serious rock band, USA, just a few months later. The band changed their name to Geordie and focused on hitting it big in then thriving UK glam rock scene. The band scored several hits in their homeland, including the top 10 All Because of You and the top 20 Can You Do It, although the glam scene was fading rapidly by the mid-70s. Geordie continued to play around England but decided to call it by 1977. Johnson spent the next few years away from music but eventually reformed Geordie in 1980, just as the band signed a new record contract. Johnson was still doing voice jingles for extra money. The one that led to his audition with AC/DC was a commercial jingle for Hoover in London, just across the road from the Vanilla Studios where he auditioned for AC/DC in 1980. AC/DC asked Johnson if he'd like to try out for their vacant lead vocalist position. His name was mentioned in a few different circles. A fan out of Cleveland had managed to hear his music and recommended him to legendary producer Mutt Lange. Interestingly enough, Scott himself had once seen Johnson perform with Geordie and gave the singer a rave review to his AC/DC mates. Johnson quickly passed the audition and was offered the slot. Putting his Geordie days behind him, the group unsuccessfully tried to soldier on without Johnson, but Johnson was now the new frontman for AC/DC and Geordie was in his rear distance. 1980's classic Back in Black became a monster hit right away. The album has become one of hard rock's all-time bestsellers over the years and pushed the band over the top globally. This album took 6 weeks to record. Johnson wrote his first song, Shook Me All Night Long, and the lyrics were inspired by his passion for cars while sitting on a bog. Johnson was initially hesitant to go and audition for the band, and he said in an interview on The Stern Show on May 25, 2011, he was 32 years old at the time and felt he was past his prime. He went as it was AC/DC, and it was a good thing. At Brian Johnson's first audition, he sang Whole Lotta Rosie, Highway to Hell, and the Ike and Tina Turner's Nutbush City Limits. At his second audition at London Easy's Higher Studios, he was asked to come up with lyrics to Givin' the Dog a Bone. Johnson was living with his parents and was in his 30s while still performing with Geordies. Wondering where it was, he had opened up an automotive shop just to kind of keep himself busy. AC/DC was already established with Bon Scott. With Brian Johnson's first album with the band Back in Black, it blew their ratings and placed that album as one of the top 100 classic rock masterpieces. Johnson's powerful voice proved to be the perfect foil for AC/DC's high-energy, hard-hitting rock, as the band continued to churn out best-selling albums and sold-out tours. Johnson fronted AC/DC hit albums, followed tops being 1981's world #1 For Those About the Rock, 1986 motion picture soundtrack of Who Made Who, 1990's The Razor's Edge, and their first release of the 21st century, Stiff Upper Lip. By now, an AC/DC member far longer than Scott was Johnson. He remains one of the most instantly recognizable voices in all of rock. Brian has been with AC/DC since 1980 till present day. What Bon started with this band up until his passing, Brian has harnessed their rock identity for over 50 years and counting. He has recorded 13 studio albums and over 1,274 performances. It is remarkable what has been accomplished thus far, and the band has never lost steam. They are at the locomotive engine that continues to power through and sell out stadiums worldwide. They are the founders of arena rock. During the Brian Johnson era, the albums are as follows. 1980, they released Back in Black. 1981, For Those About to Rock, We Salute You. 1983, Flick the Switch. 1985, Fly on the Wall. 1988, Blow Up Your Video. 1990, The Razor's Edge. 1992, Live. 95, Ball Breaker. 2000, Stiff Upper Lip. 2008, Black Ice. 2012, Live at River Plate. 2014, Rock or Bust. And 2020, Power Up. Now that I've given a small sample size of what each singer has achieved with the band, at the beginning of the show I did mention that we will have an answer to who is better between Bon and Brian that will make everybody get along. The answer is both. Now I'll tell you why. What Bon created with the band, giving them that classic rock identity, stage presence, and the popularity they had achieved in those 7 years was epic. And the bond he had with the group was irreplaceable, and there was a trust in the work that they did. They were able to produce and record 8 albums in that time. When Bon died, Brian came in as a new guy. Brian from Newcastle, he was known as. What he has done with the band for over 50 years and counting. He came in and maintained the band's legacy and stage presence. He did not come in to be the next Bon. He came in as Brian, the lead singer of AC/DC, and has been with the band through their continued success. Bon and Brian are AC/DC. That is the answer. And that, my friends, is the best answer I will give you, because without those two, we would not be enjoying AC/DC, because both Bon and Brian had put AC/DC at the top of the mountain. And for those of you who like to rock, like Bon Scott would say, it's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for taking the time with me today and learning about one of the greatest rock bands out there that has no drama. AC/DC, classic rock at its best. Once again, I'm your host, Ferris Kennedy, and this was Ferris Kennedy's Corner. Until next time.